hit the OK on that, and we're going to dive in. I've got some other people still joining here, so I apologize for that. Sometimes technology is not always, well, it's always there. It just doesn't always work the way we want it to. Okay, so adaptability, that's always a good thing. I think I've got everybody on here live that hung in there with me. Tonight's core value is train. And the topic is growth, read, watch, assess, and implement. So we're going to have a little bit of fun. I actually read a meme, actually a post on, I believe it was Twitter. A man named David Woodland said, "We pay our oldest $1 every time he reads a book. We're talking 160-page chapter books. I'm out $120 this year, and he thinks he's ripping me off. Best investment ever." So with growth, I'm talking about read, watch, assess, and implement. And reading is the number one thing. And you're going to see that Jim and I both, we read a lot. We encourage other people to read. And I thought about this today too. A lot of people, and I even encourage this, I encourage people while you're driving, commuting, to listen to audiobooks. And it's not the same as reading. And I want to, this just hit me this afternoon. I would almost rather people be on podcasts while they're commuting and actually read books, written books. And the reason for that is when we hear things, we tend to forget them. When we see things, we remember them. And when we do things, we understand them. Not only do we remember, but we understand. And so I think it's important that we all, if you're not all reading, start developing that habit. And reading, I think it's so important on so many levels, and I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why. And part of this is school teacher in me. When I was teaching high school, and kids would say, "Why do we have to read this anyway?" If it was fiction, classic fiction especially, why do we have to read this? Well, it's fertile ground for understanding people, behavior, and motivations. And you can learn so much, whether it's fiction, whether it's biographies, whether it's self-help books. You get to learn from other people. And it's important that you do that. So I can tell you this, I did go to college. I took some time off and then I went to college. And I don't, hang my hat on that. I like to tell people I have a PhD. My PhD is a lot more important than my college degree. And a PhD is a public high school diploma, because I learned more by the time I was in high school than I think I did in the 3.5 years I spent going to college and getting a degree there. And one thing I will tell you about my college experience, for those of you who have gone or those of you who haven't, one thing about college is you have to do it yourself. And if I could sum up my entire college experience, it would be this: I read a lot. I read more than I ever read in my life. My major was in English, but my minor was in social and behavioral sciences, and you still had to take math and science and biology and geography and all that stuff. So there was all that other reading. And I was doing like 3 novels a week and then other coursework on top of it. So I got to be a good reader and a fast reader. And that happens by practice. And for any of you who are not following Jim Quick, that's Kwik, do put him on your radar. He actually does speed reading. He helps people with speed reading and that sort of thing. And he will get you up to snuff, up to par on that. So definitely a good place to get started with that. So reading is really what I learned in college, right? The degree meant nothing except that I had read an awful lot. It wasn't the coursework, the instruction work, that sort of thing, as much as just what I learned by absorbing information. And that's what reading does. So what's a college degree? It's somebody's measurement of how much you've read and retained and regurgitated on standardized tests or essay tests. So Again, reading is fundamental to acquiring knowledge. So how does that apply to us as entrepreneurs? Well, reading is fundamental, because reading is, I thought of this, reading is a talent, and it's a talent all of us have. If we're literate, it's a talent that we all possess, right? But what you read, applying what you read, is a skill. So reading's one thing, applying what you read is a skill set. And hard work is a talent also, right? But working on the right thing is a skill. Learning how to do the prioritizing your work is a skill that is developed. So reading is no different than that, okay? And I heard on a podcast from one of our members, actually, who couldn't make the call tonight, but I heard this on a podcast, and I'd heard it before, and I believe it was the Navy SEALs, one of their things that they taught on. And it said, amateurs train until they get it right. Professionals train until they can't get it wrong. Okay? So that's your goal here, is to train until you can't get things wrong. Okay? Amateurs train until they get it right. Professionals train until they can't get it wrong. No matter what the circumstances, that is the point. That's what you're working toward. So with growth, okay, that's our topic, is growth, and reading is fundamental to that. It's about adaptability. How do you level up to that? And it's moving from that complacency place, that comfort spot, and we've talked about this before, to adaptability. How do you make that shift? Are you growing? Are you actually implementing what you're hearing, learning, studying, or are you is it just another, source of information, that we're taking in, like background noise, like white noise when you sleep? It doesn't matter if you're not actually applying it. So you have to make sure that you're moving toward adaptability. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit here in greater detail. But if you're not growing, just remember this: if you're not growing, you're decaying. You're stagnant, okay? And that just leads to decay. Changing jobs, changing careers, changing your mind is what you want to be working toward. So here are a couple of things with reading. Reading is fundamental to your personal and your business growth, okay? And I'm not pushing any one book. I don't care what you read. You can read trade journals, you can read the comics, you can learn from all of those things. And yes, the comics, great satire usually. We read to learn, we read to grow. You can read for entertainment, and you can read for mental stimulation. Again, going back to my college days, it was intense, the workload that I had, because I was paying my own way through, and I worked hard, and I worked harder than I probably should have, because I wasn't as smart then as I am now. But I will tell you that my mind was on overload with all the information that I had to take in. And I needed a break from that. And the break that I took was I read science fiction. Which, to me, it was like a checkout. Like some people watch TV, like some people go to concerts or whatever. I didn't go to any collegiate events. I didn't go to any football games. I didn't go to any rock concerts. And there were lots of things. I went to lectures, and I went to some classical music things, but I just didn't get into that scene. I went to college to work, and I went to get it done and get it over with. And not that that's what everybody has to do, but because I was so focused on that, I needed an escape. I needed an outlet. And my outlet was reading for entertainment. And that stimulates your brain. But the other part of that is, if you're reading something, and this is critical, you need to take notes on what it is you're reading. Okay? And just as important as that is, you need to review those notes. Okay, it's just like, I think it's funny. If you go to church and you see all the people taking notes on sermons and stuff, and then you wonder, do they ever go back and reread those? Unless they're writing them in their Bible or something, the notes right in the Bible. Do they ever reread those notes? And maybe they do. I don't know. I'm not here to judge, but it doesn't do you any good. It does actually do you some good, because it's reinforcing it. You're getting one more stimulant in, so you're going to remember it better. But reviewing it, it may not be the right message for today, but 2 weeks from now, it might be a critical message. A year from now, it may resonate with you in a way it never did when you first read it. And I reread a lot of my favorites over and over. You've heard us talk the classics, How to Win Friends and Influence People, McKay with How to Swim with the Sharks Without Getting Eaten Alive. I mean, there are some books that you can read and get something out of it new every time you read it. So taking the notes, reviewing those notes, and even rereading, because you're going to be different than you were the first time you read something. And it's a shortcut. I guess the important thing that you need to understand, at least from my point of view, when you're reading, it's a shortcut. And there aren't a lot of shortcuts in business, right? You just have to put in the work. You have to put in the effort. You've got to do the do. You've got to do what's necessary to get to that next point. But reading gives you an edge. It gives you a foot up, and you get to, number one, learn from other people. You get to learn from other people's mistakes. You get an opportunity to mimic behaviors. And here's a quick story. This gets from reading into watching. Okay, that's part of our topic, right? Read, watch, assess, and implement. The other part is watch, learning from other people. So when you're reading, you should have that visual in there and learn from other people. But here's some of the things you can do just by watching other people, learning from people's behaviors. There was a gentleman, he owned a couple of car dealerships, several franchises actually, and he was a former football player, and he was a big guy. And you need to understand, I'm only 5'8.5", right? You got to add that half when you're as short as I am, or as tall as I am. Okay, 5'8.5", 160 pounds. When I was in high school, I was 5'7", 5'7.5", and 142 pounds. So I filled out a little bit, but I'm not a big guy, right? So that can be intimidating. People can overpower you with their physical presence. But this guy was already big. But then he had this handshake, and I've got a good handshake. We all know how important a handshake is. But this guy would grab your hand, and he consumed you with this thing. And I couldn't figure it out. It's like, because, we shook hands a lot. You'd see each other here or there, and it was always a greeting. And finally, someone just told me, he says, well, don't you know what he's doing? He's pulling you in. When he grabs your hand, he doesn't just shake your hand, he pulls you in. And I thought, well, I watched how he reacted to other people when he shook their hands. And sure enough, he'd just like pull him in, took him off balance a little bit, and it put him in that dominant position. And so the next time I shook hands with him, I pulled before he pulled me. And I took him off balance. This is a 6'2" guy, probably 250, 270 pounds. And I pulled him off balance using his own technique. A little jujitsu, judo, aikido, but you can learn from other people's behaviors. And it's not that you need to overpower people, but when you need to make your presence, whether it's a handshake or whether it's how you greet people, are you the one who initiates that greeting? Hi, I'm Rod Kuntz. You are? Or are you the person who hangs back? Learning some of those techniques, you learn it by watching other people, but if you don't start implementing it yourself to move forward, you're not doing yourself any good. So watching and assessing what other people do. Now I'm going to throw a quick thing in here. When I was in the military, and I got so much good out of my military experience, and it was probably a little different than it is today. But we had to do after actions reports. When you went out on a maneuver or you had an exercise to do, you were on a mission. As soon as you were finished, you did an after actions report. So you really analyzed what you did right and what you did wrong and what you were going to do to make corrections for the next time, right? And you made that record not only for yourself, but for everybody to follow afterward. In business, here's the key. If you're taking any notes, here's what you want to do. In the business world, it's called plan, do, review. Plan, do, review. So you make your plan, you execute your plan, and then you review the plan after you've executed it, right? That's the business world. If you're not doing and reviewing, you're going to fall into complacency. You've constantly got to be planning, doing, and reviewing. If you're not doing the reviewing part, you're going to get into stagnation. Now, here's the other thing. You've got to really ask yourself the tough question. Where do you and your organization size up? After you've read something, after you've read, whether it's a trade article, whether you've read something in a magazine, a book that you're reading, how does your organization, how does your business size up to what you've read? And you need to be honest. And this is hard to do. It's cognitive dissonance, right? Sometimes our own minds shut down at things that we don't want to hear, things that we don't want to remember. Cognitive dissonance is real. And so it's important to get outside opinions, and not just from family who love you and are going to say everything you're doing is great, but ask for an honest assessment from somebody else. How do you think my business is? How is your experience at my business? Or how does the community view me as a presence in the business world, in that environment? You need to get that outside opinion. You know, the good book says there's safety in a multitude of counselors. And for a future lesson, I'm actually going to get into this a little bit, because Jim and I are very much alike, and yet we approach things from two totally different vantage points. And so you might get one recommendation from Jim that works, and you might get another one from me that works. And one might resonate with you better than another. And we've actually had members of the syndicate actually reach out to both of us and tell us, you know, how things have worked for them. And it really is amazing where you get that symbiotic relationship, but you still have to have a multitude of counselors to do an honest assessment of your business. So make sure you've got some people you trust, that you respect, that have similar values to you, and ask for their opinion about how you're doing, how your business is doing, and just what's their perception, right? And the cognitive dissonance is tough, because we all like to think that we're open-minded, especially if we're entrepreneurs. You know, you think that we're the pioneers out there, we're the explorers, we're on the cutting edge. Of course, we're going to be open-minded, but there are still things that we may not be as open-minded as we think, you know, and it may be things that we learned from a different occupation, a different boss, a different organization we work for. But it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that that's where we're coming to the problem, or that's where we're coming to the situation with, and we have to be aware of that. And it's those little things that make a difference. And Jim mentioned this. He said, he sent me a text early this week, and I'm going to pull it up here real quick. But it was, if I can find it on here, it was about the one thing, and how one thing can make all the difference. And I think we've all seen that. We've all had that that happen for us before. But it's one thing over time. And the one thing over time adds up. And I always looked at it from, for any of you who have done orienteering, you know, map and compass reading, if you're on a 5-mile trek and your heading is off 1 degree, that may not mean anything in 100 yards. It may mean a little bit in a mile. But if you go 5 miles or 10 miles and you're just 1 degree off, you're going to be in another state by the time you're finished. 1 degree matters. One little change makes all the difference in the world. And here was the thing, I've got to biggie size it here a little bit, that Jim sent me earlier this week. He said, one more multiplier. And it's from a book he's reading, imagine that. It says, how often do you come in contact with forces that transcend the tasks at hand? Forces that create results exceeding your own expectations. You may sense you're a part of something special, even if you can't put your finger on it. For some reason, the average transforms into something magical. Often it only takes adding one small thing for this to happen. It can be subtle or it can be obvious, producing a seismic shift that triggers a tsunami in multiplying effects. One small thing is what you're looking for. You might read an entire book, might be one we've recommended or a friend recommends, and you might just get one sentence out of that whole book. That's the trigger. but look for those things, and you're not going to find them. It's almost like gold panning. You have to go through a lot of material to get to the little nugget. It takes a lot of work, but that one small thing is what you're looking for to make a difference. Okay, so read, watch, and assess. Okay, and that assessment is having other people assess as well to keep us honest, right? And the next thing is implementation. That's your counterattack. Okay, you must apply what you've read and learned. You've got to do that. So when someone's coming up to you and you've asked for their opinion and they give it to you, you've got to be willing to move on that, whether it's right away or whether you're going to build it into your strategy, but you've got to figure out ways to constantly be on the move, always changing, always pushing yourself beyond. It's just like if you're in the gym, do one more, just one more. And the other thing, here's your first tip of the night. You learn best by teaching. Help others in your sphere of influence, your vendors, your suppliers, civic organizations, your own customers. Help them, share what you know with them so that they can become better. They're going to be more loyal to you. They're going to reciprocate, maybe down the road, 5 years, 10 years, but pass it on. If you learn something, pass those tips on. It's very, very important. It's paying it forward. And the other thing is, while you're doing that, while you're helping people in your sphere of influence, what it does is it gives you a chance to vertically integrate your business. You might find other avenues up and down your supply chain that you could actually work into or have a piece of. Just any different thing to improve your business that could also expand your business. And I think the best example of that we all know about is McDonald's, of course, right? So McDonald's, where are they getting their French fries? Well, from the potatoes. Where are they getting their potatoes? From the potato farms that they have a stake in, right? What do they do with all those potato peels? Well, it helps go to feed the cattle for the burgers that you're eating, right? That's the ultimate in vertical integration, where you've got your hands in every part of that supply chain. It gives them more control. It would give you more control, but they're also making a profit on every step of that. Okay. So look for those opportunities in your business, and not every business is going to be, perfect for a scenario like that, but look for those things. Maybe you can find an area, one small thing to make that change. All right, so here's your action items. Leadership fundamentals for your employees, your staff, your partners. All of you need to be pressing in. It can't just be the leader. It can't just be the CEO. It can't just be the entrepreneur. You don't function in a vacuum. So you've got to be surrounding yourself with those people and helping everyone that's associated with your business, help them develop themselves as well. It's going to build loyalty. And you're investing in them, and they'll in turn invest in you. So share what you're reading, share your ideas, ask for input. And remember, I talked a couple of weeks ago about the Big Mac story, how the Big Mac got its name. And it was a 21-year-old secretary with all these big CEOs and MBAs sitting in a room. And who's the one who comes up with the big idea, the Big Mac that only made sense, right? It's the staff. You've got to be leaning into everyone that's in your sphere of influence for that next good idea. So next time you're in a business, any business, I don't care if as long as it's a service type business where you're dealing with people, if you're walking into a restaurant or into a store, pay attention. Pay attention to all the marketing things that are being done to you, the shopping carts, the cleanliness of the store. Go to the bathrooms. Even if you don't have to go to the bathroom, go to the bathrooms. That's like pulling the veil back on any business that you go to. How do those people handle their operation? Go to the bathroom. That's where you're going to find out. Do they have someone that's watching that all the time? They should. Is it a priority? Because everyone has to go to the bathroom. Everyone's going to use the bathroom. I don't know what percentage of people use a bathroom in a Target or a Walmart, but I know it's got to be pretty high. And even if it's just 20%, you better have a good impression on that 20%. But if you walk into a place and there are signs that weeds, this is one of my big things, weeds out front, right? Who's not pulling the weeds? how can you have overgrown stuff, trash on the parking lot? Little things like that matter. How does your business size up? How is it going to size up when you get it launched and running to the place you want it to be? Because if you want to stay on the cutting edge, you've got to pay attention to the little details. Those little details add up. So here's your next, if you're writing anything down, here's a neat tidbit from the gurus, right? The bean counters that track this sort of thing. How much does it cost to replace a trained employee? So if you've got a business and you've invested all this time and effort, you've recruited the right person, you get them in there, they're there for 2, 5, 10 years maybe, and then they leave you. How much does it cost the business to replace that trained employee? Well, the bean counters have calculated it to be 4 times the average salary, including benefits and employer contributions. So if you've got somebody on your staff, and let's say you're paying them $50,000 a year, maybe that person's you and you're working for someone else. They're paying you 50 grand a year, right? And then they've got to pay all the other stuff, the unemployment insurance and all that stuff. So they're probably paying out 60 grand a year for a 50,000 year employee, right? To lose you will cost them 4 times that amount to replace you in lost business and retraining. 4 times that amount. Losing employees costs business so much money. So taking care of employees, training employees properly should be critical and fundamental. Unless you're just working for yourself and you don't plan on growing, you need to be watching staff. And if you're working for someone else, help them watch out for you. I posted a thing on my Instagram account today, and it's just a reminder. It's a reminder for everybody out there. And it says, you don't get paid by the hour, you get paid for the value you bring to the hour. Okay? So what value are you bringing? What value are other people bringing? Okay? If you want more income, bring more value. You don't have to be an employee, you can be an employer. If you want more, if you want bigger profits, bring more value. That's the name of the game. But you better be giving that value back to your staff. You better be giving it back to the employees. Here's a great example. I was working for a gentleman, and this was actually before my time, and it probably happened 2-3 years, probably 2 years before, because it was during the Great Recession, right? 2008, 2009. And the owner of this business, very successful businessman, went to all of his department heads. I think at that time he probably had 6, 7 different department heads. And he said, I need everybody to come up with an action plan of where you're going to make cuts. Okay? I want everybody to go through. You've got 2 weeks to figure out where you're going to cut, what are we going to do, and cut all these different departments, right? And as soon as I get back from my vacation in the Virgin Islands, we're going to review those. What message do you think that sent those people? Because I went to that organization years after that conversation was held, and every single person, not just the managers, not the supervisors, every single employee knew that he had said that. Every single one. And every single one of them didn't like it. What a statement. It's one thing to ask people to cut, but you don't say, well, after I get back from my vacation, right? I mean, it's optics. It's little things like that. And yeah, he's the boss, he's the owner, he can do whatever he wants, right? Absolutely. Did it make it right? Didn't make it wrong. Was it the best thing to do? No. And that's just it. If you asked anybody out there for an after actions report, if you had a do-over on that one, he would do it over, guaranteed. So be thinking of things like that. Little things matter. People are always watching, and they're always going to be watching you. And you don't want to lose good employees. 4 times the annual salary, that's a pretty steep hit. That's a pretty steep hit. You lose a good employee, you're doing something wrong. So make sure you're taking care of those good employees, but get the value. Make sure that they understand that value. So speaking of which, I'm going to throw this out there. Other than the late start that I had tonight, and that's, I'll take the hit on that. I had everything preset. Jim was on a plane. I had everything ready to go, and it didn't log me in. So I apologize for that. We'll make corrections in the future. But what can we do? We have a curriculum established, but we are flexible. We can move and we can still hit our stuff and go back to whatever you want. So I'm going to ask right now, anybody on this call, anyone listening to this recording, all right, I want to know what it is you want to know about. What can we do? What topics would you like us to cover? And Jim and I hit it from different angles. You know, he's been in franchising, he's been in startups, he's been in angel investing. I come to it from small business, medium-sized business, home businesses. So we've got the gamut here. What is it that we can offer you guys? What topic would you like us to cover, or where would you want us to go deeper? How can we be of better value to you? How can we be of greater service to you? And we're available for phone calls, phone consults. I know several of you have taken us up on this. You can't overdo it. And if you did, we would tell you, right? We'd say, now's not a good time. Put it in writing, we'll get back to you. Reach out, email, phone calls, that sort of thing. Text message us, and we'll make it work. I know, Fred, you've tried connecting a couple of different times. I know with Jim, and it just hasn't worked out. Keep trying. You know, our schedules don't always align, but we can always make it work. So I want everyone to get the most out of what we're offering. This is our point. We want to make a difference in what you're doing. And it might just be that one little thing. You might pick up one little tidbit that makes a difference. And I had one more section. I'm going to save that on leadership, and I'm going to save that for another night. And I'm going to move this out to you guys. So any questions, comments, horror stories? I see I've got one chat, and it's, well, man, I pulled that up a little bit late. I've got everyone hearing me now. Who's got something for me out there tonight? Jim can't join us. He was spotty internet. I got a text from him. So he's been in and out, but sure they'll take his phone away if he keeps on it. I'm going to throw Taylor under the bus. Taylor, when do you get your wholesaler products? I know you're launching a new business, and you've worked out some agreements with some wholesalers. What's happening there? What have you learned?
I have, yeah. It's been, thanks for throwing me under the bus. I appreciate it.
You have to unmute yourself first.
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? I'll pull a rod. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. All right. Well, how about that? Is that better? Okay. All right. So, yeah, I've been in correspondence with a wholesaler, and something that has been kind of important to me that I've learned more about over the years is really knowing exactly where your products are coming from, and making sure that the standards for production are ethical. And so I feel like sometimes when you have a closer relationship with slower moving industries, things can take a little bit longer. But oh, Jim says I can't hear you. I don't know what's going on. It says that I'm unmuted, so I'm not sure. Can Rod hear me? Oh, Jim, that was Rod. Okay. So anyway, yeah, it's been a learning experience. I think that in the age of technology, I will say it's probably, sorry, my dog's guzzling water next to me. It's probably easier for us now to start businesses because we can reach out to people across the globe. So for example, I'm working with somebody right now who lives in Texas. She's a wholesaler and her suppliers are in Ethiopia. So I have sent extensive plans for my product to her, and she's in correspondence with her suppliers across the globe. And I mean, that's just incredible to me. And I have not, I haven't FaceTimed with her. We haven't Zoomed, you know, we've been able to develop a relationship just through technology, email communication and all that. So I'm thankful for that. But I will say that as time goes on, what I want to be better at is being able to establish face-to-face relationships. And I know that will require extra effort. So yeah, I want to learn more about how to plan ahead for things like that in business, because the more access we have to technology, I feel like it's a good thing, like I was saying, but it can also separate us, you know what I mean? And that is not always good for business. You want to, and what I love about sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but what I love about what you and Jim do with this entire course with the Y.E.S Syndicate is that it's really people focused. You know, you're teaching us how to focus on human connection and how to be good people. And I think that if a business is going to succeed, you have to have that component. So that's all I have to say about that. Thank you for checking in.
Well, Taylor, thank you. I have to say I've had some comm problems over here too. So I appreciate your volunteering there. Wayne, I saw you had a thumbs up there. What's going on in your world?
Oh man, we got a bunch of good stuff going on over here. So yeah, my first time figuring out how to do my Zoom face to face, like put my face on. I was working on it last week and I couldn't figure it out, so I got it this week. So yeah, man, I really appreciate all the stuff you guys have been telling us and stuff. I guess I have a quick little question is, so say you have a good employee and he does bring a lot of value to your business, but say financially or so you cannot afford to keep them. What do you recommend to do in a situation like that? Or you know, something like that maybe. But what is your opinion on that? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? No, can't hear me?
We can hear you. I don't know if Rod can hear you.
I can't hear anything else. So I just heard you, Fred.
Well, I don't know what's happened on my end, Wayne. When you're finished, I want you to give me a wave because I've got no sound coming through on my end, but everyone else apparently can hear you. So.
All right. So can you hear me now or no?
All right. Great.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm hoping it'll come out on the recording on the video part of it because everyone else has got it.
Okay.
Anybody else got some final thoughts? Type me a message in the memo and let me know your top takeaway from tonight. Just in the chat box there, just give me a quick memo. How to navigate a situation where you have a valued employee but cannot afford to keep them. Well, Wayne, this is what I would say about that. If you've got a valued employee but you can't afford to keep them, you need to be honest. You need to be honest with the employee, number one. Is there a way to keep that employee on a part-time basis or keep them, you know, when things get better that they could come back? I mean, at some point, if they're valued and integral to the business, would they be willing to suffer for a while longer? How much do you want them? I guess that's the other thing. I'm a fan personally of employee owned but letting people share in the profits. That also means they're going to share in the hard times. If there's a way, I don't know what your business structure is, but if there's a way that you can make it work for them, that they can help in the sacrifice for a future reward, and that depends on your values and how much you want to keep them. So that's tough to navigate. The other thing is, and I know Jim would say this too, at some point it is business, you got to rip the Band-Aid off. And people will understand that, but you can do that tactfully, gracefully, and leave that door open, if you want that person back in the future. But if the business absolutely can't afford the person, you just need to be honest and say, I can't do it. We literally can't do it. Maybe they will come up with the solution. Maybe they will find a way to make themselves more valuable. Just like the quote I read. How do you do that? They have to maybe add more value. Maybe they have to find more customers. Maybe they have to find different ways of saving money so that they're still worth it. There's never a simple solution there, but I would encourage you to do this. Number one, be honest, be open, communicate, let them be part of the solution. If there's a way that they can be part of the solution, maybe it's going to launch you into that next step. Maybe they've got ideas. So I don't know. Does that help at all? Okay. You know what you need to do right here. You know what you need to do. You know your business better than anybody else, but it is a people business. So do it tactfully and do it the right way. Just be fair. And Taylor, I appreciate you typing that in. Again, I don't know what's happened to my sound. If you can hear me, I've got you unmuted and I've got nothing here. So again, my apologies for the technology snafu, but I do appreciate that. Anybody else? I don't want to keep you on here longer than we have to. It started off on a rocky note, but adaptability is it. And Fred, I hope that some of the recommendations I sent to you earlier help a little bit. If you get a chance to look at some of those reading materials, I'm sure you'll find some value in that also. And Palin, I do want to say, Jim and I had a conversation the other day and we had you in mind for future ideas. So we never stop thinking. Our wheels are always going. So anyway, I look forward to it. I'm going to sign off, everybody. I appreciate everyone who jumped on. Those of you who had to bail early or couldn't stay with me because I couldn't get it going. Again, I apologize. We will do this again next week. Jim is up and he is going to be dealing with conflict. Wayne, I hope that's not a conversation you have to have next week with Jim. Just be fair, communicate, you'll be fine. It's
curious what you guys have.
Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.